Oh, what? This guy's never touched either a weapon or a woman? Well then, I guess we'll have to resort to more scholarly methods of settling our differences. You know, I learned a long time ago never to expect excellence or even baseline mediocrity from the crowd over at Geeks and Gamers. But sometimes they are exceptional, by which I mean exceptionally bumbling at trying to hide the bigotry that drives their entire grift. And this past week gave me a perfect example to talk about. Check out this review they posted on their website the day after the new movie Prey dropped on Hulu. This is chef's kiss racism. Prey follows Naru, a Comanche rhymes with raw, who is repeatedly told she's better than everyone else in her community at everything except hunting. So she focuses on the one thing that she's not good at and derives her entire personality from this perceived failing. Now, of course, none of that actually happens in the movie. And I strongly suspect this reviewer, Jed, the Hollywood scholar, did not actually watch the movie. He may have skimmed it. I don't think he watched it. But it's not this particular instance of racism and misogyny all wrapped up into one, and colonialism all wrapped up into one, that got my attention. It was the editor's note that was later attached to this article. Now check this out. If you thought the previous example was chef's kiss racism, this is like boss level racism. Editor's note. A staff member has brought to our attention that the term rhymes with raw is considered a racist term for Native Americans in the modern day. It was used in this article in its historical context as a term for a Native American woman because the movie takes place in the 1700s and we will not remove it. That is not how that works, my dude. Look, the term you're talking about was racist 300 years ago too. The fact that it was used by genocidal racists to erase the identity of and dehumanize indigenous women from the cultures of so-called America 300 years ago does not make it okay to do a racism today. That is not how that works. But I could have let it go at that because, again, this is like par for the course with Geeks and Gamers. But I found out through Twitter that this reviewer has his own YouTube channel. So out of morbid curiosity, I went and checked that out. And it turns out he posted a video review of this movie the same day that he posted the written article. Now, the written article is mostly a transcript of what he says in the video, but he does say something in the video that did not make it into the printed article. And that is what I'm going to talk about, because the clip I'm about to show you from his review is a perfect illustration of how someone's deep-seated, possibly unconscious misogyny can completely destroy their ability to accurately process the reality that's right in front of their eyes. And that touches into a bigger issue that I always like to talk about. So let's just check out this clip first, and then we'll talk about it.
And then later on, once the predator kind of knows where she's at, is hunting her and following her, killing all the other warriors in the tribe who really didn't do anything that were wrong. They were portrayed as, ooh, it's good that they're dying. Oh, I don't really care. Oh, they were mean to me type deal. They were asked to take someone who was proven that they're not good hunter and who is a danger to themselves back to camp. And she treats them like the bad guys. She attacks them and is upset when they fight back. It's portrayed that the one warrior is a bad guy because he fights back when she tries to attack him. That's not a good character moment for her.
And, of course, he is wearing a trilby hat, the totem of all true scholars. But unfortunately, it appears to be cursed, because he consistently fails his intelligence saving throws through this entire video. Let's talk about what he just said, because unlike Mr. Hollywood Scholar here, I think I've actually watched this movie more than once, and I actually paid attention to it when I watched it the first time. So when I heard him say that, I was confused. Did we see the same movie? I'm not sure we did. So let's take a look at the scene he just described and see if it comports with what he said. Here is the footage from the 20th century movie Prey, currently airing on Hulu.
Stop! Going home. Enough!
Did you catch that? Did you see the contradiction? Remember, that was a scene that Hollywood Scholar described as Naru starting a fight with the other hunters, and the hunters being painted as the bad guys for fighting back. Just to make sure we're all on the same page here, I'm going to play a clip again from the same scene, this time with Hollywood Scholar's narration spliced in over the soundtrack, and we'll see if he really saw what he thought he saw. What I want you to pay attention to this time is who puts hands on who first.
She attacks them and is upset when they fight back. It's portrayed that the one warrior is a bad guy because he fights back when she tries to attack him. That's not a good character moment for her.
Now, what actually happened in that scene? What actually happened in that scene is that Itzy, the hunter, grabbed Naru twice against her will, and then Naru turned and slapped him. And from there, Itzy grabbed her and threw her on the ground and began escalating the assault. That is what objectively happened. You just saw it as well as I did. Yet somehow, Jed, the Hollywood Scholar here, thinks that he saw a scene in which Naru started the fight. How does that happen? I mean, if you extrapolate that out to a wider net, that is the mindset of someone who witnesses or hears about a gang sexual assault at a frat party and thinks it was a consensual orgy. That is the mindset of someone who sees a political activist sexually harassing a sitting congresswoman on the steps of the Capitol and believes the man when he says he was just flirting with her. How does this happen? It happens because the viewer is looking at the world through misogyny-tinted glasses. The reason he's able to look at a woman being physically assaulted and the actions Itzy carries out at the beginning of that fight, under all jurisdictions of American law, are physical assault. The reason he thinks he sees a woman starting that fight is because he thinks, without knowing that he thinks it, that men have a right to unrestricted access to a woman's body. He thinks it is perfectly normal and acceptable, perfectly masculine, completely natural for a man to touch a woman at any time, for any reason, and if she objects, she is the bad guy. And this deep-seated misogyny feeds into everything else Hollywood Scholar, and by extension geeks and gamers, hated about this movie. I think it's demonstrably true, as I'm about to show you, that no depiction of a female warrior or hunter would satisfy this guy. It's impossible. It doesn't matter how much work the movie puts in to building her up to credibly being a hunter and a warrior, and this movie does put in a lot of work to build her up to that point. None of it matters. He would object no matter what, because he thinks it is impossible for a woman to be a warrior or a hunter. Full stop. Just listen to the rant he ends his review with. I think this is the aspect of the movie that really pissed him off the most. So it's the one I'm going to focus on the most. Check this out.
And then it comes to the fight between the predator and the main character, and that fight was just utter nonsense. No logical consistencies. She does more damage 1v1 against this predator, who's smaller than the original predator, and she kicks its ass. Dutch from the original Predator movie, he got his ass handed to him soundly. If he hadn't been so intelligent using traps, he would have died. He barely drew blood from that thing. But this little girl, who doesn't have the strength to do nothing, can go 1v1 with the Predator because she's strong Wamens!
Hold up. Naru pursued the exact same strategy as Dutch, my dude. The details are different, but the strategy is the same. Both Dutch and Naru realized that they were not strong enough to physically strong enough to beat the predator in a straight up fight. So they both laid a series of elaborate traps and tricks to lure the monster into exactly the spot they needed it to be for the kill shot. The lesson you should draw from Dutch being unable to punch the predator into submission is that strength in this situation doesn't matter. Physical strength, human physical strength against the predator doesn't matter. The lesson there is not, girls are too weak to punch their way through this. The lesson is that everybody is too weak to punch their way through this. So everyone who faces a predator has to outsmart it in some way. Have you seen any of these movies?
She does not have the strength to do the stuff that she did. She absolutely does not. She does not have the strength to cut off its arm with a weapon like that. Do you know how much force it'll take to cut off a human's arm, let alone a scaly predator arm? And she does it like it's nothing.
Did we watch the same movie? I'm really starting to doubt it. Look, man, Naru did not cut off the predator's arm all by herself. The predator cut off his own arm. All that happened is that Naru parried that blow. The predator was activating his razor-sharp shield. Naru had the metal spear weapon thing that she had stolen from him. As he swings it at her, she blocks it and redirects the force. So the blade, instead of hitting her, hits his own arm instead, with the force of his blow multiplied by the force of Naru's parry. This is a very common thing in weapon fighting, in sword and shield fighting, and if you actually had any knowledge or experience in that field, you would know that what you said is really silly. And it's rooted in some really silly misconceptions you seem to have about strength and size and the advantage of those things. Isn't that interesting? Maybe I'll elaborate on that later.
And then later on, she pulls the predator off its feet. She just yanks on the predator and knocks it into the bog to drown it. She does not have the strength to do that. I'm sorry. I would question Dutch having the strength to do that. And he's roided out Arnold, for God's sake. She does not have the strength to do any of the things she did in that final fight.
No, actually that makes perfect sense. It's perfectly logically consistent. The body goes where the head goes. And if you've taken any kind of self-defense training or any kind of grappling or anything like that, you would know that. And you would also know that it's a lot easier than you seem to think it is to direct someone's head where they don't want it to go, especially if they're off balance from all the other crap you just threw at them. That totally read as making total sense to me. But then again, I know more about this than you do, don't I?
Close out on one of the dumbest parts of the movie. She attaches her rope to her axe, and it's suddenly a weapon of mass destruction? No, you would need immense strength and years of training to operate it like she does. At the end of the movie, when she's fighting the Frenchman, she's swinging it around in a way that would make Jet Li jealous. She does not have the skills or strength to wield that axe in that fashion. And anyone who's put a string on a thing knows that when you yank it back, it doesn't just come back like Mjolnir and suddenly appear in your hand, and every way you throw it, you'd have to pull it with immense force just to get it all the way back to you in one pull, let alone to hand level and hand position. She's swinging it around like absolutely nothing. It's asinine how she uses that axe throughout the movie.
Immense strength to use the weapon effectively, he says. I wonder, do you have any idea how much a tomahawk weighs? Let's find out. It says here that at most, tomahawks weighed 20 ounces. That's not even 1.5 pounds. You really think it takes immense strength to effectively use a weapon that weighs 1.5 pounds at most? Interesting. Witness the confident ignorance bred by misogyny and other forms of bigotry. Hollywood Scholar here, like a lot of people in our society, has a cartoonishly exaggerated estimation of just how big the difference in size and strength is between people assigned male at birth and people assigned female at birth. There is a difference, especially if they are of different sizes and body weights, but it is not an insurmountable difference. Anyone who knows anything about fighting, like the people who choreograph fighting in movies, understands this. And one of the things I appreciated about this movie was that the action choreography took those differences into account. The two best human warriors in this movie, Naru, the main character, and her brother Tabe, fought a bigger, stronger opponent, the Predator, in ways that maximized their advantages of smaller size, quickness, and lower center of gravity, and minimized the advantages of size, strength, and technology that the Predator brought to the table. They didn't just rush up in his face and try to punch him like Dutch did in the first movie. They understood the situation they were in, and they fought accordingly. It is possible to win fights that way. It is definitely possible for a smaller, weaker person to inflict devastating damage on a larger opponent. And the only thing keeping you from accepting that is lack of experience and lifelong training by the patriarchy. If you doubt this, let's take our humanity out of the equation and conduct a thought experiment. Would you, Hollywood Scholar, or any other assigned male at birth person watching this, be willing to get into a confined space where you're going to have to fight, unarmed, an angry 100-pound cougar? And I mean an actual cougar, a puma, a mountain lion, not an older woman who prefers sex with younger men. Would you be willing to fight a mountain lion? I don't think you would, if you're being honest with yourself. And there's a good reason for that. Even though, on average, you are stronger and bigger than a mountain lion, you are even smarter than a mountain lion, but you know, going into that situation, that mountain lion, despite its disadvantage in size and strength and brains, can still fuck you up. It will very likely send you to the hospital. It might even kill you. And when you're in that situation, when you're having to face off against that smaller, weaker, physically weaker mountain lion, the sex of that creature doesn't matter to you. The simple fact of the matter is that the female of every animal species on this planet is capable of inflicting devastating damage on attackers, whether they're attacking her or her children or for whatever other reason. Every animal species on this planet trains both its males and its females to fight, and it is training. Animals learn to fight. That's what play is for most animals. They learn this from their parents, from their siblings, from the other members of whatever their animal social group is. It is universally true of every animal species on this planet, including humans. but you think it isn't true of humans because, like everyone else in our society, you have been trained to see AFAB people as weak. AFAB people themselves have been trained to see themselves as weak. In at the women's self-defense nonprofit I used to work with, we called this learned helplessness. Human females are not an exception in the animal kingdom. They possess an instinct to fight in their own defense, in defense of loved ones. Some of them even have an urge to do it just because they enjoy it. But we don't create spaces in our culture that make it safe and comfortable for them to train that way. Instead, we train them in the opposite direction. We condition them from the moment of their birth to see themselves as weak and defenseless, and to see AMAB people as cartoonishly exaggerated strongmen and giants, just the way that you see them because you received the same training on the opposite side of the coin. And the reason patriarchy trains AFAB people to be weak is because if they weren't, if they lived in a culture where they were able to indulge their instincts of fighting to defend themselves and defend others, and to indulge training in fighting for its own sake, if that's what they want to do, if we had that kind of a culture, women would be harder to control. And there can be no patriarchy, no male supremacy, if women can't be controlled. A population that's capable of fighting is harder to oppress. That's why you think women are weak. That's why a lot of women think they are weak. That's why most men think of women as weaklings. It is training, it is not nature. Now let's spend some time dunking on Hollywood Scholar or other things.
And then for a minute here, I want to talk about the main character. She is horrific to watch. She is incredibly unlikable. She has an origin story equivalent to Riri Williams. It's just like her mom's like, you are great at everything here in the camp. You are great at everything, but hunting, that's the only thing you're not great at. That's okay. Most people aren't as good at you at everything else. Why do you have to be so good at hunting? It's like, because you don't think I can be good at hunting. Later on, when she's allowed on a hunt, she kind of sneaks on and then they let her stay. She's the only one with any medical knowledge, and then she whines when she's asked to take care of an injured warrior. If you're the only person who knows medicine, you stay with the guy who needs medical attention. You don't whine about that. That's just logical. It's irrelevant if the guys don't think you can hunt. If you're the one who knows medicine, you stay with the guy who needs medical attention. Why is that so hard for her to understand? She even abandons her patient later on. Luckily, she did enough that the warrior was able to survive, but still, she abandons her patient because I'm a big, strong woman. I don't want to be medicine. I want to hunt. That guy could have died because of her arrogance and her whiny nature. That immediately makes her incredibly dislikable and is not a good vehicle for the audience to connect with the movie, the characters, or the story.
Hey, Jed, why don't you take off your misogyny glasses for a little bit and pay attention to the movie? Naru, okay, it's established explicitly in the text of the film, Naru had done everything that was possible for her to do to that guy. That's why they had to take him back to camp. And she leaves the other warriors to take him back to camp because she is worried about the safety of her brother and she wants to go back and check on him. Not because I am a strong woman and you guys are oppressing me. It's in the fucking script.
She's just horrifically awful to watch. And throughout the movie, the first 3/4, she hunts a deer, she hunts a rabbit, she hunts a mountain lion, and then she hunts a bear. In all 4 of these hunts, she proves that she is incompetent and incapable of being a hunter.
No. It's amazing. It is amazing how profoundly your bigotry blinds you to what happened. It blinds you to the text of the film you were watching, all right? She fails to catch the deer because the deer and her both get distracted by the arrival of the predator's ship. That's what spooks the deer. She fails to hunt the rabbit, and then she figures out a way to kill the rabbit with her tomahawk by attaching a string to it. That means that she can kill them from farther away. When she's helping hunt the cougar, she actually hits it Go back and watch it again. As she's falling from the branch, she stabs it with her spear. She weakened it and then Tabe came in behind her and finished it off, as he admits when they're tied up to the tree later on. And as for the bear, well, don't you complain elsewhere in this review that heroes need to fail? She failed there, that is true. I'll give you that. That was a failure born of her own overconfidence, and she overcomes it later in the movie. But that scene is there so that she can witness for the first time what a formidable opponent the Predator is going to be. That is what scares her to death, and she runs away, wisely so, instead of trying to stay behind and fight the Predator. That is the moment where she realizes she's in over her head, and she's going to have to study this foe in order to defeat it. You claim to be a Hollywood scholar. Don't you understand how filmmaking works?
And speaking of a bad guy or bad guys who don't really do a whole lot necessarily wrong, the movie portrays the Frenchmen as worse than the Predators. Worse than the Predators. Sure, they do some really shitty stuff in the movie, and that's just kind of the era. They were hunting, they were trappers, and it was just kind of the thing that happened. But they were worse than the Predator. She was more proud about killing the leader of the Frenchmen than the Predator itself. That was just really asinine. Still, the white man had to be the villain at the end of the movie.
I'm sorry, what? She was prouder of killing the Frenchman than she was of killing the Predator? That must be why she let out a victory cry after the Predator killed the Frenchman. Oh wait, that didn't happen, did it?
There's also the major historical inaccuracies, like the modernized dog. They didn't exist back then. They might have had domesticated wolves at the time, but they wouldn't look like a modern dog would. If she had a wolf as a companion, that would have been cool, but the dog was way too modern in so many different ways. The breed of dog that accompanied her didn't exist yet for another few hundred years, because this took place at the early 18th century. It doesn't make any sense for a dog like that to exist.
What? I'm sorry. What? That may be the single most asinine thing you've said in this review. That statement, all by itself, should discredit your opinion in the eyes and ears of anyone who watches your video. Historical accuracy? And you think Native Americans didn't have dogs? The genetic line of domestic dogs and wolves began to diverge over 100,000 years ago. By the time humans reached the New World, they had dogs. And I mean, Native Americans had dogs. In fact, the breed of dog we see in this movie is a Carolina dog, also called an Indian dog, because that was the one most common among Native Americans when white people arrived. Well done with that confident ignorance, bro. Well done.
And there's a whole lot of other little historical accuracies that really bugged me as someone who really loves that era. The Western frontier era from kind of the 1600s to the late 1800s. I love that era. I've read so many books about it. Louis L'Amour just perfectly encapsulates the era for me, and this was an utter abomination when it came to historical accuracy. Even the costumes looked cheap and pathetic, honestly. And then there's little stuff like character decisions, like, and you're not gonna sleep in war paint. The character wakes up at the beginning of the movie in full war paint. That is a major nitpick.
I'm sorry. How the hell would you know that? How the hell would you know what is accurate to the Comanche people of the 1700s? Look, the producer of this film is a Comanche. A large part of the production crew, including hair, costuming, and makeup, were also from the Comanche Nation. I'm going to give the hot take here, Jed. Comanche people have a more accurate understanding of their history and culture than you do. And certainly more than Louis L'Amour does. Louis L'Amour was great at attention to detail, but he was not historically accurate. Those are not the same things. The myth of the West that Louis L'Amour helped shape is a fucking lie. Try reading some Native American authors. They are out there. I think you'll find it very educational. Oh, God. Oh my god, get me out of this thing. Holy crap. Hey, thanks for checking out my channel. Thanks for coming to my hat and weapons show. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, be sure to hit like and subscribe and that bell for notifications. And until next time, remember that what is best in life is to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and engage in discourse with the women.